Welcome everybody. This is our Inspo Jam about the TrackerBot. It's still pretty new. We did start the project back in April, but there was a lot of tech spiking and a lot of interviews with the client. We're actually making progress now. The project has officially begun, and yeah, we're getting a lot of experience with the new Codebots platform. So, Chris, if you could start the music, please. Welcome to TrackerBot 2023. Stephen, take it away. Chris, you can start the music.
Just leave it. It's good. All right. Thank you. Oh, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that was in there. We can keep going.
Yep. This is the evolution towards Codebots. Okay, so just a little background on, the legacy application that has existed since 2016 for defense is called the Commercial Tracker. So this was initially bot written and manages things for defense such as projects, activities, task contacts, data aggregator, so it's a lot of data from different sources and puts it all together, and also allows other users to provide commercial advice within defense and a bunch of other stuff. So it actually does a number of different functions, that some of which aren't really related to each other. But it's been going quite well for a while, but it's on an old tech stack. It's got a bit of an old look, defense sort of look, and it came time for defense to replace it, so they engaged us to start the Tracker Refresh project. So Tracker Refresh project, so yeah, been running since April. We had a prototype and user sessions with Dean. Out of that we got a backlog, and now we're basically building up the TrackerBot as a stepping stone towards delivering the new tracker. The tech stack of which will be Java and React, whereas the old tracker was Java plus JSP, something. Java service pages, yeah. So just updating the tech stack as well. So just refreshing it top to bottom and adding the bot into the mix, which is what we're going to talk mainly about today. Yeah, so this is the same page as here. And then this is the new page for managing contacts. So that's where we're headed towards with the TrackerBot. So yeah, today we'll talk about TrackerBot, the different parts of it, so requirements metamodel, metamodels, visual libraries, and the entity model and the UI model. So, whoops, talk about the requirements model.
You're going to bring it up. So one of the big things with this project is using Jidoka in it. And one of the parts of that is we've created a new requirements model in which we pull all of the requirements from the backlog, which is in Jira, and then display that in a model in the Codebots platform so that we can use that when we generate our reports, and to make sure that anytime we are completing any requirement, we can make sure there's tests associated with it, and if there's any documentation that we need to make sure that we aren't skipping anything. So in this. So this is where is our requirements model? Here it is. So this is currently all of the tickets that we have in the backlog imported from Jira. I know a few other projects have done something similar, importing stuff from GitLab, but unfortunately a little bit different with Jira. So it's fairly similar with, I think, one or two differences. The only real one being it's not working in light mode, and our issue keys all begin with an MPPR as opposed to just some random issue number. And that's pretty much it. The other feature is all of these requirements can actually be linked to in our actual model, so that we can make sure that we're linking requirements to components, which we'll show a little bit later in the actual model. I'll pass on to what's next. And now on to Zach with the meta models.
You. All right. Cool. So, it's fine. I've got one hand. Sorry. We've gone through 2 iterations of our models, meta models, visual libraries, everything. We had this old TrackerBot meta model originally, which had everything in it, and it got a little bit confusing and pretty big. And I said that I didn't need both my hands, but I actually do. Sorry. Yeah, this isn't too bad, but what we've done is since Codebots released the cross-model referencing, we now have a number of different meta models. So if I go into the Tracker UI, this is the new meta model that we've created this week. And here we go. So we've got the root of the model, which contains entities and pages. Currently, entities are in here, but they'll actually get moved across to the entity meta model later on. Here we have pages, which contain different page types, and then inside pages, you have all sorts of different components that you can have inside of them. I won't go into the nitty-gritty of that yet, though. Next, we've got a visual library. So once again, because we hadn't used these tools before, it was our first time using Codebots for a lot of us. We made a lot of mistakes early on, and we ended up with this Tracker Components visual library that was quite large, and probably only a third of that gets used. And there was extra fluff in there as well. So we started fresh, and we now have a core visual library. And it's still kind of messy, but everything is being used. So I think pretty much everybody here has probably used the visual libraries. Has anyone not used them before? You don't have to put your hands up, but yeah, it does seem like most people have. So I won't go into too much detail here. But again, these all build out into the visuals for the model. Now I'm going to show you the old model that we had before, like this week basically, and the steps that we've made to improve it and bring ourselves closer to the Codebots guy who was flexing from the start of the presentation. So here we have our pages, our page components, and this is an example of a custom page for our login page. There's no other page that looks like it. It's only model-driven because we are doing model-driven development, but really it's custom. It only gets used once. So this component is a login component, and it's completely based off of a single visual library component, which is a single image in the visual library. Moving on to CRUD pages, similar concept, except this time, once you're actually in the app, we have these 3 menus, a top menu, a left menu, and this back-end, front-end switcher. This is essentially where you go to flick into admin mode. But we created a grid layout and set the columns, or rather Dean did this very early in the project, which is great, but it does mean that every time we created a page, we had to add these 3 different components before we could add the actual bit that was unique and really mattered. So you'll see that that's changed in the new model. Lastly, we had this large CRUD list component that we could see here, and pretty much everything was driven by variables off to the side. Fortunately for you guys, the faces aren't in the way, but they are for me. Okay, I got rid of it. You can see that we have table headers switched on or off for your different CRUD pages. And creatable is, do you want a create button? Editable, do you want edit buttons on the side of your CRUD page, etc. So we had everything driven by these variables and an image which wouldn't change based on those. Lastly, last thing to go through on the old model was these were our entities. Basically, all I want to point out to you here is that they're really ugly. And again, there were more variables on them to track how they should operate when used in your CRUD. Now, I'm going to flick over to the new and improved model, the Tracker Refresh model. So over here, we've got a few cool things. The first being everything looks better. These are that's what the entities look like now. Yep, much prettier. Pat did an amazing job here. So we've also got validators on these as well, and requirement links, which link back to the pretty crazy, but they link back to the requirements model. So say, for example, I had a ticket in Jira, which was, create the tasks page, and then I create the tasks entity. I can link this to that ticket directly. Then, once again, the single custom page is identical to the way it was before. Nothing has changed there. The CRUD lists and the form pages have changed, however. So they don't look quite as good as the previous model did, but that's because they are now actually customizable. So I can add in all of the different columns that I want based on the attribute of an entity, and I can delete them and add new ones in, and it continues to update. So yeah, probably job date edited. Cool, so there you go. That's an example of the new and improved CRUD. And over here, we have the new and improved form. I didn't actually show you the form page on the old bot, but it was pretty much the same as the CRUD list. It was one single component. There was no way to customize it other than using variables. Whereas now you can actually click into it, you can add inputs, and in the same way as the CRUD list, you can grab different fields, and then so now when you click create new or update and go to the create or update page for jobs, then you'll be able to update these two different fields. You can then, obviously, you can rearrange them as well. The actual styling for these pages will be done using custom code and protected regions, but this just dumps all of the different inputs out onto the page, and then you can do what you want from it from there. And yeah, so that is TrackerBot at the moment. There is much more coming. As you can see, there are lots of different pages which we will create in the future. And we do have the application getting generated out by the templates, but it's using the old templates for the old model. So I can't actually show how this is actually going to generate out at the moment, because all of those references are currently pointing to the wrong places, because everything has changed. Because now, instead of, for example, using the CRUD list as an example, instead of using the entity that was listed on the CRUD list and finding the attributes off that, it actually has to find the attributes which have been added directly onto this here. But yeah, so that's that. I don't have a ton more to show.